Hello CraftDee Family, and welcome to another tutorial by She's So Crafty. For today's DIY projects, I have selected some of my favorite high-end DIYs using the different signs available from the Dollar Tree. Now these include a variety of wall hangings, some decorative shutters, and seasonal decor for your space. Now this compilation will have step-by-step instructions for each project and also styling ideas that I've used for my space. Now as always, all of the projects I create have complete supply lists in the description box below, so you can easily use it for reference as you gather your supplies. Now before we start, I have to say, hey to all of my subscribers, and if you're a new visitor to my channel today, I do hope you consider subscribing as well, and stick around to enjoy these crafts and the different ways that I'll show you how to style these in your space. So now, let's jump right into the projects. Now here's the inspiration photo for this project. Now I loved how cute this is, and best of all, it would be super easy to make with Dollar Tree items. Now this would make the perfect project, especially if you're new to crafting, and it's so easy to make. Now for this project, we'll need one of these pumpkin signs from the Dollar Tree, some Raffia from the Dollar Tree. We need a scrap piece of fabric or scrapbook paper, and this was from Walmart for $1, and we'll need a thankful word from this package of metal words. Now we're first going to start by removing all of the tags and the string from the pumpkin. And then I'm going to remove that metal leaf and glue, and then I'm going to sand that glitter off. Now I will be using the front of my sign for this project because I have plans for another project on the back of this pumpkin, but if you're using the back, you can skip the next few steps. Now I'm going to be covering up the orange by painting it with one coat of this chalk paint to give this side a nice clean slate to work with. And here's where you pick up if you're using the back side. So now I'm going to trim down that vine stump to fit a wood stem. You can get these wood stems from the Dollar Tree or just out in your yard. Now you just want to mark the size with a pencil, and then what you want to do is you want to take your X-Acto knife and you want to score that board. Now it'll be easy to break off by scoring it a few times. And then once you bend and break off those pieces, you can just go ahead and clean up all the jagged edges just a bit. So now that we've done that, we're going to apply a coat of Mod Podge to the entire body of that pumpkin. You just want to make sure it's nice and even. And then you want to take your fabric or your scrapbook paper and you want to lay it evenly on that Mod Podge. Now once you do lay it in place, and you just want to make sure you smooth it out to the edges. And then once in place, you can go ahead and trim down those edges following the shape of the pumpkin, but just trimming it off with scissors. So now this step is optional, but I'm going to apply a layer of Mod Podge over the fabric, and this will kind of give it a nice satin finish. Now while that completely dries, we can prepare our metal word. So we're going to start by removing the word thankful, and what we're going to do to this is we're going to apply a coat of white chalk paint to the word. Now once that is dry, we can add some acrylic paint in the color Orange Harvest. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply 2 coats, and I'm going to make sure I let it dry completely in between the coats. And then finally, when everything is dry, I'm going to protect my finish with Mod Podge. Alright, so now everything is good to go. We can apply the word to the pumpkin. Now to adhere it, I'm just going to apply some hot glue on the back of the word, and then I want to take the word and center it near the bottom edge of the pumpkin, not quite at the bottom, just a little above. And once that's in place, we can go ahead and grab that wood piece, and we're going to adhere it to the stem of our pumpkin. I'm just going to apply a generous amount of hot glue to that stem and press that wood piece in place. And now for the final embellishment, we are going to make a bow out of the raffia. So you just want to take that bundle, straighten out a few strands, and you want to tie it into a bow. And then once you get your bow, you just kind of shape it and trim it to fit at the bottom of that stem. And then if everything looks good in the placement, you're just going to apply a little bit of hot glue to the back of bow, and then you're going to adhere it to the pumpkin to complete the look. And here we have it, such an easy but beautiful pumpkin DIY for your space. Now when I did see this at Kirkland's, I knew that those who are new to crafting would definitely appreciate this fun and easy DIY. Now, even though I made this project to look like the Kirkland's version, you certainly can add or change anything you like to match your home decor. The possibilities are absolutely endless with the project, so I want you to have fun creating your own versions. Now for this project, we will start with 4 long signs from the Dollar Tree. We'll also need 8 of these jumbo craft sticks from Lowe's or the Dollar Tree. And we'll need a scrap piece of foam board. Now the first thing we're going to do is to grab your signs, and we want to remove all of the hang strings and the tags. And then I'm going to take these out to sand them so I can reduce some of that glitter on the letters. So now that we've removed all of the loose glitter, we're going to trim off the picket edge of the boards. So I'm going to take my ruler and I want to mark a line about 1/2 inch from each end. And then once you mark your line, just make sure you measure twice, so you'll have to only cut once. And then I'm going to grab my cutting mat, and I'm going to grab my utility knife to cut these. Now you just want to carefully cut along the line with that utility knife, and 3 passes should cut through these boards. Now you can use a ruler if you don't have a steady hand, but I was really comfortable in cutting these and didn't have an issue. Now you want to repeat this on the other end and for 2 more of the boards, and now you have 3 trimmed boards. Just set that 4th one to the side. Now you want to take one of those boards that you did trim, and what we're going to do is we're going to cut it down the center a long ways. So I'm just going to take the ruler and I want to measure and mark the center in a few places. And once all your marks are made, just draw a line down the center to mark it. And then once again, grab that utility knife and you want to cut the pieces right down the center. So now I'm going to grab my SureBonder silicone mat to protect my work surface from hot glue. I'm going to grab one of those full boards and a half board. Now we'll be bonding these 2 together to make my shutter the perfect size. Now I will be using some leftover paint sticks to bond these together, but you can also use craft sticks if you like. Now what I'm going to do is just apply some hot glue to the sticks, and I want to place them down the seam of the 2 board pieces. Now you want to make sure that you squeeze the boards together as you glue to prevent any gaps in between the boards. And then you're just going to follow up with a bead of hot glue around those paint sticks for a little bit of extra security. And then you're just going to repeat this for a second board. And now you want to grab that 4th board after you finish. Now what we're going to do with this 4th board is we are going to cut a straight line down the center. And now what you want to do is grab one of those cut shutter pieces, and you want to mark the width of the shutter on that cut piece you just made. You just want to go ahead and mark the line and then use your ruler to make a straight line. So now we want to make sure we double check it to make sure it's the perfect size. So the next mark we're going to make is down the center, just like we did for our shutter piece. And now we're just going to cut down those lines, and what we're going to end up having is two narrow pieces. And now we're just going to repeat this for that other half of the board. And now we have our 4 pieces for our shutters. So now it's time to paint, and you want to grab one of your shutters. Now, what I'll be doing is using this white chalk paint for a base coat, but you could use acrylic if you prefer. Now what I'm going to do is apply one coat of the paint, and I want to apply it to the entire face of the board, and you do want to make sure you get around the edges as well. Now once that's covered, you're just going to repeat this for the other shutter board. And now that both of them are covered, just go ahead and let them sit to dry. And what we're going to do now is paint the smaller pieces as well. So now that everything is nice and dry, we need to mark the slats on the shutter pieces. So I'm going to use that halved piece we attached as a guide for the first slat. Now that measurement for the first slat, we're just going to transfer down to the larger part of the board and use that for the second mark. And what we'll end up having is 3 slats. So we're just going to make marks all the way down the board, and then we're going to draw lines to connect them. Now that all of your lines are drawn on this one, we want to make sure we draw lines on the second one as well. Now I'll be trying out this clear Waverly wax for this project, and I'm going to be tinting it with a gray color. Now I'll be using this gray called Elephant Gray by Apple Barrel, and this is acrylic paint. Now I'm just going to add 1 part gray to about 3 parts wax and then blend it together thoroughly. Now before applying, I'm going to take some painter's tape and I want to apply it to the board along one of those plank marks so my planks will stand out. You just press it firmly into place, and then you can start applying your wax to that slat with a texture brush, and I like to use just a regular basic chip brush. Now you want to apply straight even strokes to resemble a wood grain. Now then I'm going to take a bit of this pavement gray, which is a darker gray, and I'm going to apply it to the edge where the tape meets that plank line. Now this will make a clear division between the planks, and you're just going to blend it in with that chip brush. And then once that's blended, you can add a little dimension with a few more dabs of that pavement paint throughout the plank and just blend it in. Now you just want to let it dry a few minutes, and then you can remove the tape to reveal the first plank. Now you want to take that tape and place it on the second line, and then repeat the same process. Now using the wax for this process allows a longer working time, and the blending turns out so nice. Now without the wax, the paint will dry too quickly and you won't be able to blend as well. So try out the wax, it really turned out great. And then you just want to finish up the board with the same process on that third plank, and this one is completed and we can do the second one. So now we can paint the smaller pieces the same way, and what we're going to do is we're just going to add some of that antique wax color, and then we're going to go around the edges with some of that darker gray, and then we're just going to blend and distress in just like we did before until you like the way it looks. And repeat this process for the remainder of those boards and let them all completely dry. So it's a few hours later, and now all of our pieces are dry and we can finish up our shutters. Now I'll be applying 2 of these smaller pieces to each shutter, and what I want to do to place them is to take a ruler and mark a line about 3 inches down from the top of each end. And then I'm going to apply some hot glue to the back of the plank piece, and I'm going to apply it in place along the mark that we made. And you're going to do this for the other one as well. And here's what it looks like, and we're just going to do this for our second shutter. So now that both of our shutters are done, we can work on our hardware accents. So I want to take that scrap piece of foam board and a compass, and I'm going to draw out a circle that's about 2 inches wide. If you have something that resembles about a 2-inch wide circle, you could use that as well, but I'm going to be using foam board for this. Now we're going to cut those circles out, and I always suggest using a fresh blade for your X-Acto knife to do this, and all you have to do is cut these out on a cutting mat. And now we're just going to take 2 of the circles and glue them together. Now this will make 4 sets. And now we're going to take the glued circles, and I just want to sand the edges down until they're nice, smooth, and even. So now we can grab those 8 jumbo sticks. Now what we're going to do with the jumbo sticks is we're going to cut off the ends of one side to make them nice and even. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure the stick at 7 inches and cut them all down, but I end up cutting off an additional 7 and, well actually additional 2.5 inches to make them 4.5 inches, so you can do that now. So now that all your sticks are cut, what you want to do is glue 2 of them together to make 4 sets. Now for the rod, I'll be using this 7/16 inch dowel that I got from Walmart for 97 cents. Now you can certainly use the dowels from the Dollar Tree if you like. They're a little bit smaller, but they should be able to work for this project. Now what we're going to do is cut the dowel down to 10.5 inches, and we will need 2 pieces in this length. Now once they're cut, I'm just going to sand each side down until it's nice and smooth. So now we can paint all of our pieces. Now I'll be using this black acrylic paint to do this. Now you just want to apply 1 coat to the front and back sides of the sticks. Then you want to apply a coat to the front and back and sides of the circle pieces as well. Now if these are a little bit hard to hold, which I found, you can just place a skewer in one side to help hold them. And then you can paint those dowels. Now, as an accent, I wanted to use these upholstery tacks that I got from Walmart for 97 cents. Now, I'm just going to apply paint to the heads of these upholstery tacks with the acrylic paint. Now, after you paint these, you can go ahead and coat with Mod Podge if you like. Now while that dries, we're going to grab those shutters and we're going to put some hooks on the back. So I'll be using 2 pieces of nautical rope to do this. Now I'm just going to loop the rope, and then I'm going to place it at the top center and then apply hot glue to hold it into place. Now once this is applied to both boards, just add a little extra glue for security. Now I always like a finished look, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a piece of craft paper and adhere it to the back. I'm just going to go around the end, the outside with hot glue, and then press that craft paper into place all the way around the back. And then you want to feel for that rope loop and make a tiny cut in the paper near the bottom of that rope loop, and then just fish out that rope through the hole and then hot glue that opening back into place. Now once that's done and we have our finished look, we can just take our X-Acto knife and trim off all of that excess paper. So now that our hardware pieces are dry, go ahead and gather all of them up. Now I'm going to take those tacks and I want to clip off that nail portion on the back of them so they'll all lay flat. And then I want to lay out the sticks and I want to place a circle halfway under each end. And then I'm going to grab the hot glue and then secure the sticks to the circles. Now here is where I make that 2.5 inch additional cut that I mentioned earlier, but just make sure all your sticks have been cut to about 4.5 inches. So now you want to take your upholstery tack heads and you want to apply hot glue to the back, and you want to place one at the top of each stick that is attached to the circle. And then you want to apply 2 tacks at the bottom of each stick about 1 inch apart. And here are all of the pieces with the tacks in place. And now we want to lay out our pieces with the tack side down, and we want to place them 5 inches apart. And then we're going to tape them into place so they don't shift. So now what we're going to do is take that dowel and we want to apply in place below each circle with hot glue. We want to make sure that it overhangs evenly on each side as well. And then you just want to apply a bit of hot glue on the other side of the dowel for extra security. So now that you have both sets done, you can grab your shutters and start to apply them. So you just want to make sure that the piece that you place will be nice and centered at the top. And what you want to do is apply some hot glue to the back of that piece and then secure it in place on top of your shutter. And then all you have to do after this is finish up the other shutter. And here are both pieces all done, and now they are ready to add to your decor. And here they are. The shutters are all hung up and on a display. Now these turned out so nice and I absolutely love them. Now I am so impressed with the clear wax and how you can customize and tint it. Now it's definitely something I will use in a future project. I'm loving the realistic texture it creates. And the hardware up top looks so realistic. I mean, who would know that these are made from dollar items? Let me know in the comments what you think about this project. Need any long sign from the Dollar Tree. We'll also need 3 of these lanterns from the Dollar Tree. We'll need 6 tumbling blocks from the Dollar Tree. We'll need 6 craft sticks from the Dollar Tree and 3 wood cubes or beads from the Dollar Tree. So I'm going to lay out my Surebonder silicone mat and grab all of my wood pieces and my hot glue. Now I will again be using my Surebonder wood stick hot glue. Grab your straight edge and you want to glue each one of those tumbling blocks in sets of 2 end to end as shown here for all 6 of the blocks to make 3 total sets. Now once your 3 sets are all bonded together, you're going to take those craft sticks and you're going to place 1 craft stick on each side of that set. So just apply a generous amount of that hot glue right on the side and place a craft stick right on top. Then take your scissors and cut off all of the excess so it's even with the edge of your blocks. Now we're just going to do this on the other side as well, and we are going to add that stick on there, press firmly and cut off all of that excess. So now we have 1 assembled block set. So now all we have to do is just to add our cube or a wood bead if you have it, apply some glue to the end and press that little block on the end, make sure it's nice and secure. Now what this is this will be a holder for all of our lanterns. And so we're going to repeat this for the other 2 block sets. And here are all of our hooks all made and ready to go. So now we're going to grab all of the lanterns and we're going to remove all of those tags from the lanterns. Now I am going to also remove the candles, and they just push right out of the bottom. Now what I'm going to be doing with these lanterns is I am actually going to be painting these in a black color. Now I'm going to be using some Krylon flat black spray paint to do this. I'm going to apply 2 coats, making sure it dries at least 10 minutes in between each coat, and you want to do this for the hangers as well. So while those dry, I'm going to grab my sign and I am going to be preparing it for paint. So initially I was going to paint the back, so I'm going to go ahead and remove the hanger, a string from the back, and remove all of the staples. Now I got to thinking, I was like, you know what, maybe I'll do the front because it has those slats on there that I really like. So in order to do that, I'm going to have to remove this metal heart from the front. So I just took a tool and just scraped it right off. You can use a screwdriver to do this. And of course it's going to tear your sign. So in order to smooth it out, just take some sandpaper and just smooth it nice and even with the remainder of the sign so it blends right in. So now I'm going to protect my work surface and I'm going to be painting my sign, and in order to do this I'm going to be using some white chalk paint. So I'm going to go ahead and add some chalk paint to the front of my sign, and I want to make sure I apply a nice even layer over the entire front and along the edges of the sign. Now once it's all applied, let it completely dry and then apply a second coat and let that dry as well. So now that the very top layers are nice and dry, I wanted to highlight some of those panels. So I'm going to scoop out the paint that went in between those little edges, and I'm using this embossing tool that I got from Dollar Tree to do this. You could use a pen or a pencil, but this is what I had on hand. And when it is scraped out, it really gives the rustic look of individual panels, and I'm absolutely loving this look. So my camera did stop in the middle of this section, but what I did is I drilled 3 holes at the bottom of my sign, and I put 1 in the middle and 2 on each side. And then I'm going to grab my lanterns that are nice and dry. These holes will be holding these little hooks here to hold my lanterns in place. Now what I did is I drilled a hole in the back of each one of these little hooks as well. And as you might guess, they're going to attach to the front of the sign. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab some screws to hold my hooks in place. I think this is the best way. You know, hot glue is okay, but for this I think screws would be best, and I'm using 3/4 inch wood screws. So I'm going to start to apply a screw through the back of my sign into the front. You can use your drill or screwdriver, whatever you're comfortable with. Now once all 3 screws are inserted into the back, go ahead and flip it over to the front, and you'll notice the 3 screws are sticking out of the front of your sign. So this is where your hooks come into play. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just thread one of the lanterns onto the hook, and then I'm going to place that back end of the hook that has the pilot hole, connect it to the back of that screw, and then screw it in. You just want to make sure it's in there all the way and don't strip out the line. Just go ahead and screw it in until it's nice and snug. So now when you flip it over and look, your little cube part should be pointing up where your lantern doesn't fall off. And now you can repeat this on both of the other ends on the other 2 screws. And here are all 3 of my lanterns on the little hooks. I like the fact that they extend out a little further and they look like they're free hanging like natural lanterns would be. So this is the absolute perfect look that I was going for this project. So now that that's done, we need to decorate the top. So I thought maybe I can do a Cricut cutout on this, but I really wanted to keep it simple. So I went through my stash and I saw this home sign back from Valentine's Day that I had left over. I love that it has a natural wood texture on the front. So I said, yes, this will work perfect for this. I really love it, and it's very farmhouse looking. So I cut off the tags and the strings on the back. I'm just gonna apply a few dabs of hot glue on each end and then place it on my sign. So once that's nice and centered and looks good, I was like, okay, that looks great. So now I want to add some greenery to each end. So I have these bunches of clover that I picked up from Walmart. They were only 97 cents a bunch. So I'm going to pick off about 4 little stems of that, and then I'm going to wrap the ends in some jute twine. Now you just want to wrap it up until there's about 1 inch or so of the bottom covered, and then clip it off at the end and hot glue that end in place so it doesn't fray. Now once you have that first bundle, you're just going to go ahead and repeat and do a second bundle to go on the other side. Now you just figure out the placement to make sure that they're even, apply some hot glue to the sign, and place your little bundles at each end. And now I'll grab your candles and turn them on, and you can stick them right up into your lantern's bottom. They'll fit nice and snug, and I'm loving the little warm flicker that these little candles have in these lanterns. So in order to hang this, go ahead and flip it over to the back, and I have some jute string with knots tied on each end. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to place one of these on each side of the back of my sign. So I'm just going to put a generous dab of hot glue, 2 dabs, and place a knot in each one of those dabs and press that knot into the hot glue. Now you want to do this on both sides, and then go back and cover up those ends with a little more hot glue just to make sure it's nice and secure in place. Now once that completely dries, you are ready to hang your sign. And here is our cute little sign all hung up and on display, and I'm loving the look with these new lanterns. Now I think that this sign would be perfect in an entryway or even displayed above some fun farmhouse cow print. Now we will need one of these football signs from the Dollar Tree. We'll also need one of these Happy Fall Scarecrow signs from Dollar Tree. And we'll need some wood beads. Now I'm going to start with taking that fall sign, and I want to go ahead and remove the hanger and the staples from the back. And then remove that Happy Fall sign from the front. Now we will be painting the back of this sign, so go ahead and protect your work surface, and we will be using this white chalk paint to paint the back. Now I'm just going to be applying one nice coat to the back of the sign, and then sit it to the side to completely dry. So while that dries, I'm going to take that football sign and I'm going to remove just the 3 pumpkins from the sign. And then once they are removed, I'm going to apply a coat of chalk paint to the back of each one of those pumpkins. So now that they are dry, we can start to apply our color. So like our topiaries, I'm going to add a mint green to one of our pumpkins. And then I'm going to add that light orange color to another one of the pumpkins. Now one of our pumpkins will remain white, so I'm just going to cover it with a coat of white acrylic paint. So we have the stems of the pumpkin poking out, so I'm just going to use a dark brown color, and I'm going to paint the stem of each of the pumpkin this dark brown chocolate color. Alright, so now we can work on our beads. Now these are 16mm wood beads that I easily cut in half with a pair of wire cutters. I made a short demo on this, and I'll link it up in the top right hand corner of this video and also in the description box below. Now I'm just going to be using some hot glue to apply these beads all around each of the pumpkins. And here are all of my 3 pumpkins with the beads. Now, since we're spelling out the word fall, I will need 1 more pumpkin. So I'm going to take a scrap piece of foam board, and what I'm going to do is trace one of those pumpkin shapes onto it. And then I'm going to take my X-Acto knife and I want to cut that pumpkin shape out. So now I'm taking a scrap piece of checkered fabric, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply hot glue to my pumpkin and I'm going to press it onto the fabric. And then I'm going to trim off the excess. So now we can go ahead and apply the beads around this pumpkin as well. Now for the letters, I printed out the word fall using the Cooper black font in the size 300, and I'm going to be using this black foam sheet to copy the letters to. So I'm just going to tape my letter to that black foam sheet, and then I'm just going to cut it out. Now you want to repeat this for all of your letters. Now then, once all the letters are cut out in place, we can adhere them with hot glue. Now for the letter A, I outlined it with this chalk pen so it would stand out better against the buffalo check print. So now we can grab our painted sign and prepare it for our pumpkins. Now I will be placing lines on the painted side, so I'm marking their placement along the edge. And then I'm going to take something with a straight edge and I want to mark lines across the front where we will be drawing them. And then I'm just going to line it up and I want to make those lines right across the front of the board. Now to make those lines look a little more natural, I'm going to use some white acrylic paint to dry brush it over the lines and blend them in. Now I also have a little bit of pavement gray on the palette as well, and I'm going to mix that in with the white, and I'm going to use this to distress a bit around the edges and along the lines. Now I'm using a piece of cardstock here to distress along the lines, and it gives it a nice crisp appearance. And now once that dries, we can start to add our pumpkins. So I'm just gonna lay them out on the board, making sure they're nice and evenly placed. And now to secure them, we're just going to apply hot glue to the back of each pumpkin. And here they all are in place. Now to hang this, I'm just going to tie a knot into each end of a piece of jute twine. And what I'm going to do is I am going to secure this on the back. Now I'm just going to apply a generous amount of hot glue on the top of each one of those knots to secure it into place. And then you can add a bow on top if you like, and you can hang your sign up for display. How cute is this? Now these beaded pumpkins are so cute on this sign, but they come together so quickly and easily. Now for this project, we'll need 3 of the Halloween Beware signs from the Dollar Tree. We'll need 2 packs of the 5-gallon paint stir sticks from Lowe's for 98 cents. We'll need 6 oval wire baskets from the Dollar Tree. We'll also need 1 wire basket from the Dollar Tree, or we can use the gutter guard mesh from Home Depot. And we'll also need some tumbling blocks from the Dollar Tree. So we're going to start with the beware signs, and the first thing we want to do is remove all of the tags and that hanger ribbon. And then what we're going to do is stack all the signs together and tape them on each end to keep them all in place. And next we want to take a ruler and we want to mark the locations of our baskets. So the first mark will be at 1 3/4 inches down from the top, and then the next 2 marks will be 8 1/4 inches apart. And then just transfer the marks onto the other side as well. Now to make sure the marks are even on each board, just mark the sides of the boards while they're still taped together. And once they're all marked, remove that tape. Now you want to lay all 3 of your boards out, and you want to lay up those marks, line up the marks, and then tape them into place. Now once they're all taped, you want to flip the entire board over, and you want to make sure those marks are transferred to that side as well. And now you just want to take your ruler and you want to make a line across the boards along those marks. And now just grab a pack of those 5-gallon paint stir sticks, and we'll be using these to secure all 3 boards together. So we're going to cut 2 sticks at about 17 inches, and then we're going to cut 1 stick at about 14 inches. And now that our sticks are cut, we can apply them to the boards, and we want to be overlapping those lines that we marked. We want to make sure that the 14-inch stick is at the top, covering where those the side where the holes are. Now here I'm just applying hot glue, or you can use wood hot glue and apply each one of the sticks into place. And now this is optional, but I'm going to apply some craft sticks in between each one of the paint stir sticks for a little extra security. And these are just little pieces I had left over from a previous project. And here are all of our sticks glued and secured into place. So now you can flip it over and remove all of the tape holding it together. And now we can mark those lines on this side on those marks that we made. So now that we have those marks made, we're going to take one of the wire baskets and we want to line the top edge of the basket to one of those lines, and we want to mark the bottom edge of the basket on our board. Now this will give us the distance between the top ledge and the bottom of the basket. This is what we'll use to place our blocks on. And now we just want to place and center all 6 of our baskets on the board. And once we have everything in place like we want it, I'm just going to mark the top center of the basket and the center of the basket's location on top of the board. And then I'm just going to label the baskets with tape from 1 to 6, so you know which order to place them back on the board, because we know that these Dollar Tree baskets can vary in size. So now that you have all 6 marks on the board, we can use these to drill our holes. So you want to make sure you use a drill bit that's large enough for zip ties to go through. Now you just want to place a scrap piece of wood underneath and then drill a pair of holes on each side of that basket mark that you made. And you'll end up with a set of holes on each side of that white mark as shown here. And then you're going to repeat this for the rest of the board. So now you can take your tumbling blocks and we're going to place together 6 sets of 4 blocks. And then using something with a straight edge, I'm going to glue 2 sets of the blocks together. And once I have those 2 sets, just stack them up and glue those together. Now I'm going to repeat this until I have 6 4-block sets. And now we can take our block sets and we're going to be adhering them to the board. Now you want to adhere these about 1/2 inch above that mark you made for the bottom of the basket. And here I am just testing it out to make sure 1/2 inch is pretty good. And then once you have the placement, just place it in place with hot glue. And then you can just place those remaining blocks on the board the same way. And here's everything in place. Now grab that second pack of paint sticks. Now what we're going to do is we're going to measure 2 of the sticks to be about 17 3/4 inches. We're going to make a mark there because we'll be cutting those. And for that second stick, I want to cut it in half, and it ends up being just a little over 10 1/2 inches each. So now that they're cut, we're going to take one of the long cut sticks and we're going to apply it over the top edge of the board, and we're going to be covering up those holes that were for the hang tags. Now I'm just going to use some hot glue to secure these into place. You just want to make sure it's nice and even along that top edge. And then we're going to take one of those halved sticks and I'm going to adhere it to the other long stick as shown here. We just want to make sure that the long stick is on top of that short stick and that it's at a 90-degree angle. And then we're going to repeat this on the other side. So now we're going to flip our board over and we're going to be adhering this piece on top. But first I want to add a few staples to the back of those corners of that piece we glued, just to make sure they're nice and secure. Now before gluing this piece to the board, I want to measure and mark down about 6 1/2 inches from the top. Now this is the mark that will be level with the top of the board. So now you just apply some hot glue to the back of the board and you want to place that top piece on top, making sure it lines up with that mark that you made. Repeat this on the other side and then add a few staples to secure it in place. So now that everything is dry and secure, we can prepare to paint our piece. Now I will be adding a few coats of some white chalk paint. Now this came out of a bulk package, but I just put it in a little squeeze bottle to manage it a little better. Now when you paint, you just want to make sure you get those edges as well. Now when everything is nice and dry, what we're going to do is we're going to be marking the board slats. Now these will be spaced 2 boards for every sign that you have. So we're just using the pickets on the signs to make a mark every 2 pickets. And then we're going to use a ruler to draw the lines. Now you should end up with 6 board lines when you're finished. Now to paint these lines, I'm going to be using some painter's tape and I'm going to apply it along the line for a straight, nice finish. And I'll be using this elephant gray acrylic paint to apply the lines and a little bit of distressing. Now to apply the lines, you can use a brush, but I'll be applying the paint with this flat edge of a picker tool that I picked up from the Dollar Tree. Now I like the age look that this edge will create. And then I'm going to follow up with my chip brush, and I'm going to be dry brushing on some of that elephant gray color, and I'm going to apply it to the plank just for a weathered look, and you want to make sure you get the edges as well. And then we're going to carefully remove that tape, and we are going to repeat this for those remaining planks and also the top piece of the frame, and let it dry completely. Now my camera died when I did this part, but what I did is I took some of that mesh from, or you can use a wastebasket, and you cut it to fit that opening and then staple it into place. So now we can add our baskets, and we will be using zip ties to secure these. Now all we're going to do is we're going to insert those zip ties from the back, and we want to loop it through the basket's mesh. And then we're going to feed that zip tie back through the back of the board, and we'll be using 2 zip ties for each basket. Now once those are nice and looped through, we're going to secure them in the back. And then we're just going to repeat this for the other baskets. And then flip it over and make sure we clip off all of those tails. So now that our baskets are nice and secure on our board, we can remove that tape. Now I like a finished appearance even on the back, so I'm just going to cover up those zip ties with duct tape so it doesn't poke through the backing that I'll be putting on. And then to hang the baskets, I'm just going to add some rope loops with nautical rope. I'm going to start by securing them in place with a little bit of hot glue, and then once they are hot glued on, just go ahead and trim off any excess. Now once that hot glue is nice and dry, you want to add a few staples to the bottom of that rope as well. And then to cover up the back, I'm going to be adding craft paper to cover all the way around the back of the board, and I'm just going to add hot glue around the edge of the entire back of the board. And the bottom edge you just fold under to make sure it's not exposed on the other side through the pickets, and hot glue that into place as well. And we did cover our rope, so all we're going to do is cut a small slit, and then I'm going to fish out that rope. I'm just going to use my embossing tool that I have. Just fish that rope out through the little slit that you made. And then once you fish out that rope, just secure that slit with a little bit of hot glue. Now as an option, this header can be customized with Dollar Tree signs at your preference. Now you can assign a basket to each family member, and you can place family on the top. You can also use gather for gathering all of those little trinkets that you have. And here is another family option that's available at the Dollar Tree. Or how about laugh, and this would be fun for a playroom. Or you can even print your own for whatever space that you choose. And then as a final touch, you can add some tags to your baskets. Now I made these with cardstock and a marker, but Dollar Tree sells these as well. Now I will be using these Dollar Tree medium size clothespins, and I will be attaching a label to each one of the baskets. And here is the final project, you guys. I am so excited about how this ensemble turned out. Now, I love anything that has to do with organizing, and these baskets are a nice size and pretty functional for most spaces in your home. And these tags make it feel even more personalized and specific for your space. And this header is ready for you to customize, or you can just leave it blank. And here's a simple printout using fruits and veggies in the baskets. And if you want to have baskets at each one of the family members, this would be such a great idea to place things that you won't forget while heading out the door. Now for this project, we'll need some of these glass gems from the Dollar Tree. And we'll also need 5 of these Beware signs from the Dollar Tree. Now the first thing we're going to do is to take about 20 of the most round pieces of gems out of the package to prepare to be painted. Now I'm going to start by priming these with my Zinsser 123 spray primer, and then I'm going to follow up with a few coats of this black stainless steel spray paint by Rust-Oleum. Now while they dry, we're going to go ahead and prep our signs. Now Dollar Tree seemed to be so extra with the glitter this year, so we're going to go ahead and sand to stop all of that shedding. So now that those are nice and sanded, we're going to remove all of those ribbons and tags from the top. So now we're going to take 2 boards and we're going to join them together down the center. Now you can use craft sticks for this, but I'm going to go ahead and use some scrap paint sticks that I had in my pile since I had so many left over from previous projects. Now these sticks are pretty strong, so I'm only going to use 4, and I'm just going to space them out evenly. And then we're going to apply a generous amount of that hot glue and then press them into place all the way down the center of the boards. Now once they're all bonded, we'll have a smooth surface to work on the other side, and we're just going to repeat this with the other set of boards. And now we have 2 sets completed. So now what we're going to do is we're going to draw a half arch across the top. Now I determined that the arch will meet the side at about the 7-inch mark, so I started to make a mark with it for reference and then just freehanded an arch shape from the top down to that 7-inch mark. And now we can go ahead and cut the arch out, and I will be using a utility knife and an X-Acto knife to do this. So using your sharp utility knife blade, you're just going to cut along that arch line, and it took me 3 passes for it to cut through this board. Now if your arch crosses a stick on the back, you just want to flip it over and cut through that as well. Then you should be able to bend and snap off the piece fairly easily. And now you just trim up those jagged edges and then sand it all smooth. Now you want to grab your second board and you want to lay your arched piece face down right on top, and you want to make sure the edges are all even. And then you can just trace on your arch shape to that second piece. Then all you have to do now is to cut that piece the same way as you did your first piece. So now you have your 2 arched pieces ready to go. So now we're going to take that last sign and we'll be cutting this into 4 cross pieces. Now you want to start by measuring to find the center, and mine was at about approximately 11 3/4 inches. And then we're just going to draw a line down that center where we made our mark. And now you want to make a line lengthwise down the center, and I'm just using the slat markings on the board to determine this placement. And then you're going to grab your cutting tools and you're going to start by cutting that center line first. And then you're going to cut those in half. And now that you have all 4 pieces, you're just going to sand down all of the edges until they're nice and smooth. Now I wanted to remove that fin style edge from the bottom of my shutters. So all I'm going to do this is I'm going to make a mark, a straight line along that bottom picket fence mark. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut them off with my utility knife. Again, I just make 2 or 3 passes and these pieces should break off pretty easily. And then all you have to do is sand the bottom to make sure it is nice and smooth. So now we're finally gonna get ready to paint our piece. Now I'll be using this white chalk paint for this project. Now you want to apply that chalk paint vertically along the face of the shutter, and you also want to remember to paint all of those side edges as well. And then once it's all covered, you just want to repeat this on your other shutter. And while those dry, we can go ahead and paint those smaller pieces as well. So now that our shutters are dry, we can mark our wood plank placement. Now with a ruler, we're just going to mark 4 equal planks. And once our 4 planks are marked, we're just going to mark them out with our ruler and a pencil. And then just repeat this process for your other shutter. So now we're ready to work on our wood look. So I'm going to be using some painter's tape as I paint each one of the planks. Now this will help each plank stand out a little better. Now in order to get the wood look, I'll be using this antique wax by Waverly. Now I'm going to apply this using my chip brush, and I'm going to be applying that wax along the grain of the plank. Now you can play around with the texture using the brush to create a more realistic look. Now once you finish that plank, you're just going to remove that tape and just go ahead and place it at that next plank location. And then you want to continue to add that wax 1 plank at a time until your shutter is completely covered. And once this is done, you just complete the other one as well and let them sit to dry. And now you can take those smaller pieces and you want to paint them with the wax as well. Again, you just want to apply it in one single direction, and you can play around with that wood grain. So that now everything is dry, we can apply those smaller pieces to our shutters. Now I'm going to place down my ruler for a guide, and I'm going to be placing the most bottom plank with the fence side towards the outer edge about 1 inch from the bottom, and then the other one will be placed at 11 inches. Now to secure these in place, you just want to apply your high temperature hot glue to each piece and secure them into place. And now we can grab our glass gems that we painted. Now these will be the pieces that look like the clavos nails across the front. Now what we'll do is we'll place 4 of these gems or clavos nail pieces on each one of those cross pieces. Now we want to just go ahead and space them out nice and even. And then you want to apply your high temperature hot glue to the back of each gem and secure it into place. Now you could also use E6000 as well. And here are all of our clavo snails in place. Now to hang my piece, I will be applying a piece of jute twine with knotted ends on the back of each one of my shutters. I'm just going to fold it in half, and I want to place a generous amount of hot glue on those knotted ends to secure it into place. Now I like my pieces to have a clean backing, so I'm going to be applying this craft paper over the back. You just want to apply hot glue around the edge of the shutter in sections, and you want to press that paper into place. Now once the entire back is covered, just go ahead and feel for those 2 knots from that hang string, and you want to carefully make a slit in the paper right above those knots with your X-Acto knife. And then you just want to fish out your jute twine and pull it through the slit. And then you can seal the opening with hot glue or a piece of tape. And now you could just trim off all of that excess paper around the edges using your X-Acto knife. And now your shutter is nice and ready to hang. And here are the shutters on display. Oh my goodness, I think these turned out amazing. Now this piece reminds me so much of an old vintage truck with those rustic nails and wood finish. Very, very classic look. And adding a wreath is super cute, and it's totally customizable to your colors and taste for your decor. Now you can keep this green or add pops of color. There are so many possibilities. And using these gems as faux clavo snails turned out great. Now you can also flip these shutters in an opposite direction for a different look, or even place these on the side of an indoor window. Just let me know in the comments what you think you would do with this in your home. Now for this project, we'll start with one of these beware signs from the Dollar Tree, or you can use a Christmas or fall sign as well. We'll need some of these wood Christmas trees from the Dollar Tree, and some of these silver hooks from the Dollar Tree. Now the first thing we're going to do is to take the board and go ahead and remove all the tags and the hang strings. Now you can sand the glitter off the letters if you like, but this piece wasn't too bad. So what we're going to do now is we are going to be painting our board. Now I'll be using this chalk paint for this project. So I'm just going to apply some of that paint to the board, and I want to spread it evenly, making sure that you cover those edges as well. And then set this to the side to completely dry. So now we can work on our trees. Now I will be using 4 of the wood trees from this package. Now I'll be using some Mod Podge to apply scrapbook paper to my trees. Now I'm going to start by applying Mod Podge to each one of my wood trees, and then what I want to do is apply those trees to the back of the scrapbook paper pieces. Now once all of your trees are applied, you want to take your X-Acto knife and you want to trim off all of the excess scrap paper off of that wood tree. And then just repeat this for the rest of your trees, and here they are. Now I'm going to trim each tree in black with a Sharpie just to help it stand out a little better. And then just set these to the side. So now my board should be dry, and I'm going to use some of this antique wax to create a wood look. Now the first thing I want to do is to mark the center line of the board, and I'm going to mark it with a ruler. And then I'm going to take a piece of painter's tape, and what I want to do is apply it along that center line we made. And then using a chip brush, what I want to do is apply that antique wax on the board in straight strokes in one section. Now once you apply a little bit, you can go ahead and add some texture by making some wavy strokes or circles if you like. Now after you apply it, you want to let it dry a few minutes, and then you can remove your painter's tape. Now this will create your first plank. And then you can go ahead and apply that antique wax for your second plank. And once all applied, you just want to let it completely dry. So now that it is dry, we can go ahead and add our trees and our hooks. Now I want to lay the 4 trees out evenly, and you want to make sure that the top star is just peeking right over that top edge of the board. And then I'm going to use hot glue to apply each one of my trees into place. And now that our trees are all done, we can add our hooks. Now these are 3-pound hooks from the Dollar Trees, but I'm just going to peel off the sticker, and I want to apply some hot glue into that small open area underneath the sticker just to add a little bit of bonding security to the hook. I'm going to apply 1 hook under each one of my trees. Now at the last minute, I decided to add some of these Dollar Tree snowflakes. Now these are the clear glittery ones, but I'm going to quickly spray paint them white. Now once they do dry, I'm just going to apply one in between each one of the hooks, and I'm just going to apply hot glue into the center. So once everything is nice and dry, we can flip it over and finish off the back. Now I'm going to be using this craft paper to cover it, so I'm just going to start off by adding a bead of hot glue around the back edge of the board. And then apply that craft paper right on top. And now we're going to take our X-Acto knife and just trim off all of that excess craft paper. Now to hang this, we're going to use 2 pieces of this nautical rope on the back of the board. And we're going to form each one of the pieces into a loop shape. Now, in order to make the bond just a little bit better, I want to apply it directly to the board. So I'm just going to remove a small area of that craft paper where I want the rope to be bonded to the board. And then just apply hot glue to that exposed area and place that rope piece into place. Then just apply a little bit more hot glue over the rope ends for a little added extra security. And then repeat this on the other side and let it dry completely, and you are ready to hang up your board. And check it out, your stockings are ready and you have a cute little hanging spot for your decor. Now I really love how the wood look turned out, and it really makes it look rich. And all of the embellishments really bring out holiday cheer. I just love it. Now for the shutters, we're going to need 5 of these signs. There's all kinds you can choose from. You just want to make sure they're all similar in size. Now for my project, I am going to use these beware signs. I'm showing 4, but you'll actually need 5 for this project. Now on these beware signs, it has this little picket bottom, but I wanted a straight bottom on mine, so I'll be cutting these off. Now if yours are straight, you can go ahead and skip this step. So all I'm going to do is to take my ruler and I'm going to draw a straight line along those pickets. And then what I'm going to do is grab my cutting mat and I'm going to use my utility knife to cut these. Now these are fairly easy to cut with a utility knife. So I'm just going to slowly drag my utility knife along that line 2 or 3 times and that edge should just break off. And then I'm just going to repeat this for the remainder of my boards on both sides. And now all 5 boards should be ready, cut, and ready to go. So I'm going to grab one of those boards, and what I want to do is I want to draw a line down the center of the board. So I'm taking my ruler and I'm going to divide it equally in half. And then once those marks are made, go ahead and draw your cut line down the middle. Again, I'm going to take my utility knife and I kind of want to use another board to kind of butt it up to that line. And then I'm just going to drag my utility knife a couple times down that line. Now, once you get it cut pretty deep, you should be able to bend the board and it will snap apart nice and even. Now, we're going to end up repeating this process for 3 boards so we can get 6 of these narrow planks. And now we'll have 2 full boards. So now we're going to assemble our baseboards for our shutters, and we're going to need 1 full board and 1 half board. 1 full board just wasn't wide enough, so adding that half board gives us that width that we need. Now to connect these, I'm just going to use some leftover paint sticks, but you could also use some craft sticks as well. Now to apply these paint sticks, I'm just going to be applying some hot glue down the center of each one of those paint sticks. And then what I want to do is place it right down in the middle of that seam. Now once you press it down, press it firmly into place, make sure your boards are nice and even and kind of squeeze them together so there are no gaps on the other side. And then you want to repeat this for your other stick, again pressing firmly into place. And now our board is nice and widened, and all we have to do now is repeat this for a second board. So now our 2 primary boards are complete. So now we're going to take another one of those half planks and we're going to be cutting those top and bottom sections. And so I'm just measuring the width of the board on that narrow plank, and we're going to need 2 of these per board. So you just want to mark it in 2 places. We can get 2 of these planks out of one of those long sticks. So again, I'm just going to take my utility knife and my ruler, and first I'm just going to cut off that end scrap piece and just run your blade a few times along that line and it should snap off. And then I'm just going to draw another line, go down that line a few times with your utility knife, and then you'll have your 2 pieces for your top and bottom planks that'll go on your shutters. Now you want to repeat this for another board because you want a total of 4 planks, so you have 2 planks for each one of your shutters. So now what we're going to do is paint our shutters, our 4 cross planks, and then the 2 remaining long planks as well. Now I'm going to be using some of these Dollar General disposable gloves that I picked up. I usually don't use gloves when I paint, but I have so many to paint today, and chalk paint can be a pain to get off your hands. So I'm going to use some of these gloves. They're only $1 and you get 100. So this was a pretty good deal. So I'm going to be using my home decor chalk paint, and I'm just going to apply a good bit on a plate and also grab a wide bristle brush. Now all you want to do with this is you want to apply your paint all over the board. You want to make sure you get the sides as well. And when you cover the board, make sure your strokes are actually going a long ways and they're nice and straight. Now repeat this for your second board and all of your accessory board pieces. And now everything is nice and painted, so let it completely dry. And there we go. All of our pieces are dry and we're ready to move on to the next step. So now what we want to do is we want to take our baseboard, and I'm going to divide it into 3 different sections. Now you can use the guide from one of those planks that you adhered as that first cut if you like, or you could just go with raw measurements. Mine ended up being about 3 inches apart. Now once your marks are all made, go ahead and take your ruler and connect all of your lines to identify all 3 of your individual planks on your board. And now you want to repeat this for your second board. Now both of your boards are marked, and now we can move on to the next step. Now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take some painter's tape, and I'm just going to put that painter's tape right along the line that we just marked on our top plank. And then I'm going to be using some of this Waverly Antique Wax to paint my boards. Now I also will be applying this with an old chip brush. This will help me get some definition in that wax. So I'm just going to dip it into that wax, and I just want to apply it in a left and right stroke, just making sure my strokes are nice and even. You want to make sure you cover the complete plank. Now to get some texture, you can play around with the bristles, go back and forth. You also can twist that brush and make little knots if you want to. Just play around with the little technique, play around with the texture until you get a look that you like. Now I like to finish it up by going along that piece of tape and along the edges a little darker, because this will identify the crease in between the 2 planks. Now once your design is made, let it sit for about 5 minutes and then peel that tape off. And now take that same piece of tape and apply it along the next line on your board. Again, go ahead and apply that antique wax, play with the texture a little bit, have some fun with it, make some knots, and then you have your second plank board. Now for the third plank board, you want to repeat the same thing. Just go ahead and remove that tape and then apply your antique wax. And here is one of our baseboards all completed. Now once that is done, make sure you go around those edges so no white will be showing. And then repeat this whole process for your second board, taping it off first and making your planks. And now that we have both planks done, we can go ahead and sit these to the side and work on our other pieces. So all you want to do is apply that antique wax on the piece and kind of use that same technique. Go ahead and play around with the texture. You can make knots, you can vary the length of your strokes, and this is how it'll all turn out. You just want to kind of play with it, make it varied, make it look like natural wood. So now that I let everything dry, here are our 2 base pieces, our small pieces, and our long pieces. So now we can start putting together our shutter. So I'm going to take those 2 short pieces, and those will go at the top and bottom. You want to place them approximately 3/4 of an inch from the top and bottom edge. Now I'm going to be applying these with just hot glue, so place a generous amount of hot glue on the back, and you want to apply that top piece first, making sure it's nice and even. Now before you apply that bottom piece, you kind of want to mark where the placement is with a pencil. Now we're going to use this as a guide. So now we're going to take that piece that's going to cross across the middle, and we're just going to line the edge of it with the bottom of the top plank and the top of the bottom plank, and we're just going to mark where they come in contact so we can cut our lines. Now once we mark that crossboard, we just want to take our ruler, we want to connect those marks and draw a line. And then take the mat and your utility knife, and you want to carefully take your ruler, hold it along that line. You want to go ahead and score that line a few times, and then you want to cut it until you cut it off the piece. Now once that top piece is cut off, go ahead and test to make sure that it fits on the shutter just like you want it before you cut the bottom piece, just to make sure your measurements are okay. Mine looked okay, so I went ahead and scored the bottom and cut that off, and now that piece is ready to go. Now a good idea is to take this piece, place it face down on your other long piece, because we'll need 2 of these pieces, and you want to trace those same measurements on it. This way you don't have to measure a second time for your second shutter. Go ahead and cut that piece off, and you can set that one to the side for later. So now that we're going to take our cut piece, we are going to place it into place. Make sure everything fits well first before you glue it down. Now if everything looks good, go ahead and take your hot glue and apply a generous amount behind that cross piece. And once that cross piece is secure, go ahead and secure that bottom piece. And now our shutter is completely assembled. So now we're going to repeat this process for the second piece. And now both of the fronts of our shutters are complete, and you see the Z is automatically facing each other, exactly like they should look. So if you've been following me for a while, you know I love to finish off my projects. So I'm going to finish off the back of my shutter with this heavy duty craft paper, and I picked this up in a 140-foot roll from Lowe's. It's a little heavier than regular store craft paper, so that's why I like to use it on the back of my projects. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a piece to fit my sign, and I'm going to run a bead of hot glue around just the top section at first, the first couple of inches, because you want to do this in sections at a time to prevent any bubbling or rippling. So once you get that top section with hot glue applied, you want to press it firmly against that craft paper until it's secure. And then you just want to lift it up, and you want to apply another section of that hot glue along the sides and the center, and then press that into place. And you just want to repeat this process all the way to the bottom until that paper is nice and secure. Now that your panel is secured to the paper, we can trim off all of the excess. So I'm just grabbing my cutting mat and my X-Acto knife, and I can trim really close to the edge of our shutter piece and get all of that excess paper off. And now the back of our shutter looks nice and clean. I just love this look if you want to gift it as a gift or sell it. I just think it looks so professional. Now to hang the piece, I'm just going to take this scrap piece of nautical rope that I had on hand, and I'm going to lay it straight across the back. Now I don't want to adhere this to the paper because the paper might rip, so I'm going to adhere it to the board. Now in order to access the board, I'm just taking my X-Acto knife and I'm cutting a little bit of that paper off so that board part is exposed. Then I'm going to place a heaping amount of hot glue on that exposed board, and I'm going to lay that rope right in that little heaping amount of glue and waiting just a moment for it to secure. And then apply another heaping amount of glue right on top of that end, and then we're going to place a scrap piece of that craft paper right over the end of the rope. I just think this has a nice clean look. And then we're just going to repeat the process for our second board. Now I wanted to add wreaths to my board, so I created this one, and I'm going to show you how I did it. I used one of the 8-inch wreath forms from the Dollar Tree and a bundle of this eucalyptus that I got from Walmart for $2. So all I'm going to do is take that eucalyptus bundle and cut off all of those branches. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take each branch, and I'm just going to take the stem of each one of those and wrap it around the wreath form. I may be using these in another project, so I didn't want to hot glue them. I just kind of wanted to secure them with the wire. And I'm going to repeat this all the way around the wreath form. You just want to make sure that the ends are overlapping and that the branches are kind of secure to the frame. Now once all those branches are secure, you want to distribute them nice and evenly. Now what I'm going to do to bundle them all together is to use some of this fishing line. What I'm going to do is I'm going to flip my wreath form over, and I want to tie that fishing line onto the frame. Then once that's tied on, I'm just going to kind of spread out my branches and bundle them together until it gets the way it looks. And then I'm just going to continually wrap that fishing line around and around the frame as I go around, laying down those branches and tucking them right into place, making sure those gaps are nice and filled. Now, once you get all the way around and it looks good, go ahead and tie off that fishing line in the back of your wreath. And then turn it over, distribute your leaves evenly, make any adjustments that you need, and here you go. You have a nice, cute 8-inch wreath, and we can use these for our shutters. Now, in order to secure them, I am just going to add some of this burlap ribbon that I got from the Dollar Tree. I'm going to fold it over a few times and cut a few squares off. And then I'm going to take my hot glue and I'm going to place hot glue on each open end and just kind of seal them shut. Now, once I do this for both, I'm going to apply hot glue to the back of one of those squares and I'm going to place it at the top center at the back of each one of my shutters. Now, the reason for this is to provide a nice little area to pin my ribbon on so I can put a hanging wreath. So I cut another long piece of ribbon to hang my wreath on. So I'm going to grab my wreath and I'm going to wrap that ribbon right around it. And then you're going to measure to make sure your wreath is hanging where you want to and you have enough overlap. And you'll notice that the ribbon overlaps right on top of that square. So all you have to do is take a safety pin or a straight pin and pin it to that little piece of burlap. And now you have a hanging wreath that you can change out and it's not permanently attached. And oh my goodness, here are the two shutters on display with those beautiful green wreaths in place. I think this is an amazing transformation from Dollar Tree signs. Now, I really love working with the antique wax and the beautiful textures that it creates. Now, as you saw, it was so easy to make these little wreaths, and they were a total bargain at only $2.50 each. You gotta let me know what you think of these shutters in the comments below. Now for this project, you'll need 2 of these signs from the Dollar Tree, and you can choose any 2 that are similar in size. We'll need the 7/16 dowel, and I got this from Walmart for 97 cents. We'll need 2 packs of these hooks from the Dollar Tree. We'll need 4 small boxes from the Dollar Tree. Now these boxes are nesting size, and what they do is come in 4 sizes, and as you can see, we're going to be using the very smallest one for this project. Now these boxes were also available during Christmas in the same sizes, and they are available during Valentine's Day, so keep your eyes out. So we're going to take those 4 boxes, and what we are going to do is first remove all of those handles and strings from them by just cutting them off the box. Now in order to shape our boxes, what we're going to do is we're going to measure down the side and mark at 2 inches. Now we want to make sure that 2-inch mark is on the same side of the box. Now what we're going to do is we're going to draw a diagonal line from the back of the box until that front marking of the box. Now for the front of the box, we can go straight across and mark a line, but I wanted mine to kind of form a smiling shape. So what I'm going to do is take a piece of paper, I'm going to lay it right on top, form a crease, and then I want to cut out a piece that matches the same size as the front of the box. Then I'm going to take that piece of paper, go ahead and fold it in half so you make sure you have an even half side, and then start cutting a smile shape starting from the center fold all the way up to the corner. Now this will be your template, and now when you lay it on the front of the box, lined up with those 2 side marks, you can trace that onto the front of your box as the front opening. Now just repeat this for the remaining boxes. So in order to cut these out, I'm going to go ahead and grab some clamps and my metal ruler. Now I'm going to go ahead and clamp my ruler in place because it helps me get a nice crisp shape and line. I'm just going to take my very sharp X-Acto knife and I'm going to run it across that line a few times, and it only should take a few passes and that'll make a nice clean cut. Now you want to repeat this on the other side for the other angle as well. Now once those two sides are cut, we can cut that little smiley shape, and you just want to pull your X-Acto knife across this and you'll get a nice clean shape as well. Now here is the opening of this box, and now you can repeat this for your remaining boxes. And here are all of the boxes all cut out. Now if you do happen to get some jagged edges, just go ahead and take some 100 grit sandpaper and run it along the edges to smooth them all out. So now what we're going to do is go ahead and grab those hooks. Now we're going to be using 2 hooks on the back of each one of the boxes. So go ahead and grab 8 out of these 2 packages. Now these do have the sticky back to them, but we will be adding additional adhesive for the boxes. And what we're going to do is we're going to go to the back of the box and we're going to be adhering those hooks upside down to form little hooks on the back for our shelf. So just start by removing that adhesive covering and applying just a little bit of that hot glue inside the opening. Don't overdo it with the hot glue. These are plastic and they will melt if you add too much hot glue. So just go ahead and add a little bit to the inside and press them firmly into place. Now once those are applied, you want to go ahead and finish that for the remaining of the boxes. Now to add a little bit of extra security, I'm going to run a bead of hot glue around each of those hooks on the back of the box. Now, when you hang these hooks up, they may kind of lean forward, so I always defeat this by taking some of the Dollar Tree tumbling blocks to kind of counterbalance that weight. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 2 of the blocks and stack them together, and I want to do 2 sets of 2 stacked blocks on the back of each one of the boxes. So I'm going to glue 2 pieces together, and then I'm going to place 2 stacks on the bottom of the box near the bottom and hot glue those into place. So when you hang these up on your shelf, they won't lean forward and your contents will not fall out. And then just repeat this for the remainder of your boxes. And then once all of those are on the boxes, just go ahead around the edge of those blocks with hot glue just to make sure they're nice and secure in place. Now I'm going to take these out and give them 2 nice coats of this Zinsser 123 primer. It provides really good coverage and dries really quickly. So while that does dry, go ahead and grab your 2 boards of your choice and remove all of the ribbon and labels and staples. Now just be careful using your wire clippers. These nails and staples are sharp. Now they will need to be sanded down. They do leave little markings on the back. You can add some wood filler if you like, but sanding usually just works for me. So now flip them over, remove any kind of overlapping signage on the front. It doesn't matter if it tears because we will not be displaying this side of the project. So we are going to be adhering these together, and I'm going to be using this leftover 5-gallon paint stick and 2 1-gallon paint sticks. Now my 1-gallon paint sticks were a little bit too long, so I'm just taking my wire clippers and snipping off about 3/4 of an inch from each of the 1-gallon paint sticks. So I'm going to take my 5-gallon paint stick and place it down the center, and I'm just going to adhere it in place with hot glue. You can certainly use craft sticks as well, but I'm just using what I have on hand. So just press it firmly down the center and squeeze those 2 boards together so you don't get any gaps. So once that's nice and settled in place, go ahead and add some hot glue to your 1-gallon sticks and place one on each side. And so now that everything is firm and into place, dust off the front and we can prepare to paint our piece. So I'm going to protect my work surface and grab my chalk paint. So I'm going to be using this chalk paint to paint my piece, and I'm just going to apply some to the front. Now when you use these large containers, what I love to do is just poke a little hole. I think it tends to last a little longer when you do it this way, so you don't let it dry out. So I'm just going to take a brush, spread it all evenly in nice even horizontal strokes and let it completely dry. So now that my board is dry, we can start marking it. Now I'm going to have Farmhouse across the center, so I'm going to draw on my 2 borders. So I'm taking my ruler and I am making a 3-inch border along the bottom of the board. And then I'm going to flip it around and I'm going to do another 3-inch border. So we're going to tape off those borders. So I'm taking some painter's tape and I'm going to tape along the top of that 3-inch border on the top and the bottom. Now you want to press that firmly into place so the paint does not leak through. Now before we paint it, I'm going to take those silver hooks that will be holding my bar at the bottom, and I just want to kind of get an eyeball of their placement and mark them on the board. Now the reason for this is because I want to add some of these little squares of painter's tape where they'll go, because when I add my antique wax, I don't want wax over the back of my hooks. And this is what we'll be using, is the Waverly Antique Wax. So I do want to apply the wax in a horizontal form on the top of the board, and you can twist your brush to make it look like knots and play around with the patterns, and it really does look like wood. So once you do the top portion, you want to repeat this for the bottom portion. And make sure you get around the edges as well. So while that dries, go ahead and take that 7/16 dowel rod, and I'm just going to cut it down to where it overlaps the edge of our board, about 3/4 of an inch on each side. And I just used a kitchen knife to cut it. And so for any jagged edges, just sand down with a piece of sandpaper. So I'm going to be painting the pieces along with the 3 hooks that'll be on the front of our farmhouse board, and I'll be using some black acrylic paint. Now you certainly can use some spray paint. I only had gloss paint on hand and it'll take a long time to dry, so I'm using some matte acrylic paint to paint 2 coats on each one of my hooks and also that dowel rod. Now once everything dries, I want to protect it, so I'm going to use some of this matte Mod Podge that I got from the Dollar Tree. And you just want to put on a nice good coat of that and let it completely dry. And now that they're almost dry, I'm just going to sit these over to the side to completely dry. So I printed out the word Farmhouse in the Bernard MT condensed font in size 350 for my wording, and I'm going to be actually cutting this out of that piece of black foam. So but you could cut these and print these out on cardstock and cut them out that way, or use a Cricut if you have that. But I found that just cutting the letters out and then I'm just going to tape them to my foam and cut them out. I find this to be relaxing. Some people might not want to do it this way, but I tend to think it's relaxing and I love the way the foam looks. So I'm just taping it to that foam, and I'm just going to cut around the letter and for each one of those letters of Farmhouse. Now once I get it all cut off, you see I have a nice shaped letter, and I'm just going to repeat this for the remainder of my letters. And here they are, all cut out and ready to go. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add that silver accent that looks like metal, and all I did was spray paint a piece of Dollar Tree poster board with silver spray paint and dab with a paper towel to give it this little textured look. Now I'll provide a link in the upper right hand corner of this video if you'd like to see a demo of this, and I'll also put it in the description box. So what we're going to do is take that poster board and I'm going to flip it over to the back, and I'm going to mark a 1-inch line across the long side and then mark that on the back. Now I'm also going to do this one more time, 1-inch line, and then make another 1-inch strip along the back. Now for the next 2, these are going to be 1/2 inch strips, and we're going to do this twice. Now once your strips are all drawn, we're going to lay out a cutting mat with your metal ruler and just go ahead and cut out all of your strips with your X-Acto knife. And here are all 4 of our strips ready to go. So now we're going to take our board, and now that the antique wax is dry, we can carefully remove that painter's tape. And then what I'm going to do is take one of the 1-inch strips, and I want to lay it across the board, making sure half overlaps the brown portion and half overlaps the white portion. Go ahead and apply some glue at the very end just to secure that end in place. And once that's secure, go ahead and put a strip of glue all the way down the line and secure that entire silver strip into place. And then repeat this for the bottom strip as well. And once they all are adhered, go ahead and trim off the ends with your X-Acto knife or a pair of scissors. Now I'm going to be using these nail head tacks as accents. Now you can use Dollar Tree tacks as well. And what I did is I went ahead and cut off all the nail portions of this, and all I did was use a pair of wire clippers to clip off the nail portions just to have the nail head. So I'm just going to lay these out across the strip, and I'm just spacing them however I like. You can add as many or as little as you like. And once they're evenly spaced, apply a dot of hot glue and you can secure each one of these into place, and this is what it will look like. So when that's nice and dry, we can lay out our letters. Now you can certainly paint the letters on, use your Cricut, or you can cut out foam letters, however you like. Just space them evenly, and then I'm just going to apply hot glue to mine and apply them to the board evenly between those two silver metallic looking strips. Now you repeat this for the remainder of the letters, and here is what your farmhouse sign will look like so far. So now we can go ahead and remove those little painter's tape squares for our hooks. But before we apply our hooks, we are going to cover the back. If you have been following me, you know I love to finish the back of my projects. It just looks so much cleaner and professional. So I'm just going to apply a bead of hot glue across the back of my sign. And I'm taking a piece of this heavy duty craft paper. And I buy this craft paper from Lowe's in the construction area. And it's a little bit thicker than regular craft paper. So it's very durable. So I'm just going to apply hot glue in sections to the back and press it into place as I go. Now once the craft paper is fully adhered to the back, go ahead and flip it over, and you can trim off any excess with your X-Acto knife. So once it's nice and trimmed, we can go ahead and add our hanging accessory. Now I decided to use some of this nautical rope that I had left over as a scrap, and I'm cutting pieces that are about 4.5 inches long. So I'm just going to loop the pieces, and I'm going to place one loop on each end of the board to hang the project. Now we don't want to adhere this directly to the paper. We actually want it to make contact with the board. So I'm taking my X-Acto knife and I'm cutting out a section of that paper where the board is exposed and placing the ends of the ropes over that exposed section so it adheres to the board, and applying a generous amount of that hot glue over the end. Go ahead and repeat this for the other side, and then cut a couple pieces of that craft paper to cover up the bottom to make it nice and neat. I just think this looks so good, and if you want to resell or gift it, it just really looks nice and clean and very professional. So now that that's done, we can flip it back over, and we're going to add our 3 painted hooks to the bottom. So go ahead and remove that adhesive cover, add a little dot of hot glue, or you can actually use E6000 if you like, and you want to press one hook over the exposed white portion of the board that we saved earlier, and here is where all the hooks will be. You just want to make sure that they're nice and even. So now that our containers are dry, we can start to add our final coat to them after our primer, and I'm just going to use some regular white acrylic paint. I'm going to go ahead and apply one nice generous coat to the inside and the outside of each one of my containers. Now you can use any paint of your choice. I just found acrylic was easy to use and it goes a long way. Now for the back of the containers where our hooks were, I do want to paint these black to match my other hooks, and this is only because I did not want a white paint to scuff up the black bar on the hanging sign. And then once you get those all painted black, go ahead and add Mod Podge as well. So once everything dries, I wanted to add an accent around the opening of all of my containers. So I'm taking more of that black acrylic paint and a fine tipped paintbrush, and I am just going to paint around the edge to give it a nice worn, maybe an enamel chipped look. I just think this really makes it stand out. It really looks good, and you want to do this to all of the containers. Now you can add some of this effect to the sides and the bottom if you like. Now once that does dry, go ahead and take your 1/2 inch metal strips that we cut out earlier, and we're going to cut them in half. Now we're going to be laying one strip across the bottom of each one of the containers, and I ended up going about an inch up from the bottom, so I'm just laying it across the front, creasing the sides, and adding hot glue. Now once that front piece is applied across the front, you can go ahead and apply it along the sides as well. And then any overage, just go ahead and snip off. And this is what the detail will look like. And now all 4 of your containers have their silver strips on them. Now to make it match our farmhouse sign, I'm taking more of those nail heads, and I'm going to be putting 3 across the metal strip on the front of the containers. So again, just take a little dot of hot glue, and you want to place one of those nail tack heads right on top of the hot glue. And here is what the container looks like. I think they are so adorable. And now all of our containers are nice and ready. So now grab your farmhouse sign and we can start to put together our project. We can go ahead and grab that dowel rod, and this should snap right into place on those hooks. 7/16 is perfect, but you want to get 7/16 or smaller for this project. And then take each one of your containers and you can hook those hooks on the back around that dowel rod to spread them nice and evenly. And now you're ready to decorate and hang your project. And oh my goodness, you guys, check it out. I absolutely love how it turned out. Now I really think this project looks so very high end, and I think that metallic trim and the little nail heads just give it that extra little bump to make it look so high end. Now you'll need one of these signs from the Dollar Tree. You'll need a toy dollhouse from the Dollar Tree. You'll also need some poster stickers from the Dollar Tree. So we're going to remove our house from the packaging, and we are going to be first of all priming the back and the front entirely with Zinsser 123 to have a fresh canvas to work with. Now while that dries, we are going to take our sign and we're going to just remove that string, sit it to the side because we will be using that later. Then go ahead and remove any labels that are on the back. So once the labels are removed, we are going to add one layer of some white chalk paint to the entire back of our sign. One layer would be good enough. This will have a more of a distressed look, so one layer will be fine. Just make sure you get around those edges as well, and make sure your final strokes are in the vertical position. So now that our board is all nice and dry from our chalk paint, we are going to mark it, and we want to have a plank look on this piece. So the first thing I'm going to do is I want to measure the halfway point on my board, which my board is 9 inches, so I'm marking it at the 4.5 inch point all the way across, and then drawing a line right across, marking it down the center. Now we're going to take each one of those halves and we want to divide those in half as well at the 2.25 inch mark on the top and bottom halves that we already designated, and then mark those with a pencil as well. And when you do that, you'll end up with 4 even planks on your board. So now I'm going to go in with a Sharpie and I'm just going to hand draw over those lines. Now I did this on purpose because I didn't want them to be absolutely perfect. I mean, wood planks aren't perfect and I really wanted a rustic look. So here is what they look like. Now they do appear very bold, but I love to blend them in to the board. So I am going to take a little bit more of that chalk paint and I am just going to lightly dry brush some of that chalk paint over those lines, and you'll see how it kind of blends in those lines. It looks more natural, and this is what the final product will look like. Now while that dries, we're going to grab that house, which is now dry from our primer, and we are going to start painting this. Now I'm just going to grab a bunch of paints that I had on hand that I wanted to try out. Now I will be applying these all over the house. You'll see I'll change it up at the end, but I just kind of want to show you how I did mine originally. So I'm going to paint the roof of my house, and I wanted it to be a black color. So I'm going to go in and just paint the entire roof of my house with some black acrylic paint. Now here is the entire roof painted black on the house. Now I did want my house to be a gray, and I believe this is elephant gray acrylic paint, and I'm going to paint the entire base of the house elephant gray. Now I have two windows up top. I wanted to give them like a wood trim around the windows, and I went in with this mustard brown color around the windows. I really love this color. I love it that it looks like a wood accent, and I got a little carried away. I started adding it around more of the trims of the house, along that top arch and the door, and here's what it looked like. Now I'll be changing this up later, but I wanted to show you my process. So I got really ambitious at this point, and I said I want a pop of color for my door. So I added this turquoise blue to the door, and also the windows. The windows were great, but the door was just way too much. And I added the little swirlies up top, highlighting those, but that's okay. We will be changing that later. So now we're going to take our house and we're going to center it on our board. And I'm just using it here as a guide to place my wording on. Now I wanted my wording to say our home. So I'm peeling off the letters and just putting them on the board. This isn't permanent placement. I'm just kind of getting an idea of how I want them placed on the board. And then at the bottom I'm going to put established and a year. I just put 05 here, and I used the letter O, and I had to make my own 5 because the 5s at Dollar Tree are way too big, and I kind of had to make one with the letters. So now I'm going to take my ruler, and I am going to make sure my words are nice and even. So now I'm going to kind of permanently place them on the board, and then at the bottom do the same thing for the established year. So this is where I took my house, and it was just way too much with all the extra trims and the door color. So I'm going to neutralize that. So I'm going over the door and the trim with some white acrylic paint, and I'm also going back over the windows and also that top trim and all of those swirls. Now I am using that mustard brown color. I am still keeping that at the top because I really like that look. Now all I did in the end is I actually painted my door black, highlighted it with a little bit of gray for the accents on the door, and I love this neutral look. I think this looks so much better. So now that this is dry, I am going to add it to my sign, and all I'm going to do is add a bead of hot glue along the bottom and around the edges of my little house, and then center it as best as I can on that board between my wording. Now I wanted a little accent with some bushes on the side of my house, so I had some pieces of boxwood laying around. I'm just cutting off the ends, and then I'm going to bundle them together. Now in order to secure them together, I'm using some jute twine that I got from Dollar Tree, and I'm just going to wrap it around those stems up maybe about a 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch, and then securing that in place with hot glue until I have a nice cute bundle. Now I'm going to make one more bundle for the other side of the house for a second bush. Now once you make those, go ahead and secure those in place with a little bit of hot glue and just adhere them to each side of the house. Now once that dries, here is what the board looks like so far. So now I am going to cover up the back of my project just to make it nice and neat. So I'm taking some of that thick craft paper, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a bead of hot glue along the back edge of the piece and press it down on that craft paper until it dries. And then I'm going to grab my cutting mat and my X-Acto knife and trim off all of the excess. Now once that's done, go ahead and re-poke your holes where you did take your string out, just so it's wide enough to reinsert the string that we had earlier. We're just going to reinsert that, and it has little plastic tips that go in fairly easy. Just reinsert it through the holes through the back on each side. And now our sign is ready to hang up. And here we have it, a cute little sign that you can hang in your home. Now I think that this was so much fun to make, and it's perfect if the kiddos want to help painting the little house too for your craft. Now I have to say, I love all of these projects today, but you guys have to let me know which one of these DIYs today was your favorite. Just let me know in the comments below. Listen, I hope that you all enjoyed seeing these creations again, or for some of you, for the very first time. I hope that you all are inspired to create your own home decor using the different signs from the Dollar Tree presented in this video. Now, if you love DIYs on a budget, please give this video a thumbs up and share this video with your friends. Make sure that you're following She's So Crafty EE on Facebook, Instagram, and Pinterest for the latest news, sneak peeks, and giveaways. Now, if you like videos like these and you don't want to miss the next one, make sure you're subscribed by clicking that subscribe button below, or just click on my She's So Crafty logo on your screen and make sure you hit that bell to be notified when my next DIY goes live. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all next time.